Okay, so I think we are live now. For some reason, it says it's having problem to connect with Facebook there. Flora, if you could have a look at that. But yeah, well, Paul, welcome to this event. It's good to be talking to you again. And yeah, it's just give a sec. All right. So, hey, everyone, welcome to this case event. And today we have Paul Zizka here. He's been a very inspirational photographer through his very unconventional photography. He take photography to the next level. He like to go to crazy places and show the beauty that many of us might not have the chance to go out and see. So Paul, welcome to the event. How are you? I know it's not that long ago that we have a quick chat.
Thanks so much, Stanley. It's great to be talking to you again. Thanks too much to Kase Filters for putting this together. I like these types of events. I like being able to connect with the photo community out there. I'm doing really good. We're in the middle of a cold snap in the Rockies. It's been minus 30, minus 40 for a few days now. And I've been out there anyways. I've been out there regardless, making the most of it. I was on Lake Louise all day. And, as you know, Stanley, there's a lot of magic that happens with those very cold temperatures. So it's just a matter of bundling up and getting out there anyways.
Yeah, no, that's where all the good stuff happened, right? I know I'm missing those kind of days. So it's good to see you out there. I mean, no doubt that you'll be out there anyway. So everyone, today basically our rundown today is gonna be we'll go through and interview Paul Zizka, have Paul share his story, his backstory, as well as his approach to photography. And then from there, we will go to some of the photos that you have submitted for a review so that we could have a look and, give some feedback on what can be done better, and as well as what you have done well. And from there, we will pick a couple of winners and also announce some other exciting news, which, you have to kind of stay till the end if you do want to win the prize, as well as the knowing the news. So towards the end of this, we'll pick one winner who been engaging. So make sure that you guys are engaging with the community, with us. Ask a bunch of questions. This is perfect time. I know Paul is very busy, very difficult to get in touch to. So this is a perfect time for you to ask any question. All right, Paul. Well, before we kind of go into your photography, and as well as looking at the community's photography, give us a little bit introduction about who you are and what's your photography is all about.
For sure. I am from Eastern Canada originally, from the French part, Quebec, and I moved to Banff National Park in the Canadian Rockies, oh gosh, almost 15 years ago now. So I've lived in the mountains for quite a while, and the mountains are a great passion of mine. I relocated my entire life here in Banff, and I wake up every day feeling like there's so much to do and I'll never have enough time to get it all done. So I find it's a pretty exciting place to live. I love what I do for work. I've been doing full-time photography for perhaps 12 or 13 years, and there's nothing else I'd rather do. I like to be out there documenting the magic that's happening. It's really truly a privilege to be able to present those findings to the community and to be able to stir up emotion in people through photography. It's been a wonderful journey to be on. In terms of what I like to shoot, I'm happy outside. I like to shoot anything outside, from nighttime photography to landscape photography to adventure photography, people interacting with the landscape in one way or another. And my latest focus, my main focus as of late, has been our local glaciers here. So I've spent a lot of time documenting our rapidly vanishing glaciers, as well as another type of ice, lake ice. So it's a perfect time of year for wild ice in the Rockies. And so I've been chasing that actively over the last couple months. filters in hand, of course. And yeah, so that's sort of where I'm at right now. I'm going to be home for the next couple months, chasing ice wherever I can find it.
I must say, like, you inspire a lot of my photography. I wouldn't have gone wild skating or going to ice skate if it wasn't for your photography. So it's really exciting when looking at some of your adventures, even going ice hockeying in some of the ice skate. The grandest stadium you could say, right? And it's just incredible to see how you go out and explore some of these places and manage to find as well some of the things that you could never thought of. Now, what really attract you to ice, to the cold weather? And I know it's really uncomfortable to go out there during these extreme temperatures, but you go out there anyway and make magic happen. So what's the motivation, and where does this love for ice came from?
I find there's a few reasons why I find ice is such a fascinating subject. One of them is that, well, I live in possibly one of the best playgrounds on earth when it comes to ice. I mean, if you live in the Rockies, you kind of have to develop an appreciation for the cold and winter and ice and snow. Otherwise, you'd be a pretty miserable photographer, frankly, because we get a lot of that. So you have to just embrace it and you have to find a way to work with it and get creative with it. I love ice in particular because it's something that never ceases to surprise. It seems a little bit boring at first glance, right? It's just solid water. Well, isn't it all the same all the time everywhere? But that's the thing. It always shows itself in wildly new different ways, in new shades of blue, new textures, new colors, and it evolves very, very quickly. And so those glacier environments are incredibly dynamic places to shoot. And so that makes things very exciting from a photographer's standpoint. Every time you show up, you have a fresh new canvas to work with. And so I find, I can never get enough of ice. And in terms of shooting in the cold, it's harder and harder to find excuses. I think the gear is so good, be it the camera gear or the clothing. I mean, I find that there's really there's less and less reasons to not go out when it's cold. There's a way to just stay comfortable, stay creative out there, even when the temperatures plummet.
Wow, yeah. I mean, it might be easy for you, and I'm sure a lot of people who had never been to the cold. I mean, I remember when I first come to Canada, and I really don't know how to deal with the cold. And I think one of your suggestion was, if you're cold, just run and do jumping jacks and start moving. And that was a really good tricks. Now, so you your love and your passion for ice really take you, as well as photography, take you to explore. And I know that you're someone who put exploration forward on top of the photography itself. But by putting exploration forward, you have this ability to create this really unique photography. So when it comes to the creative side, right, crafting your photography, thinking about what to shoot, what to compose, whether or not you put a human element in there, what is your thought process behind that, and what like, just tell us a little bit on, what does Paul Zizka think when you approach a landscape or a scenery during your exploration?
That's a great question, Stanley. I've always found that there's so many approaches to photography, and there's so many ways to get creative with it. And I kind of see it as a bit of a spectrum, where at one end of the spectrum, you have photographers who work 100% spontaneously, near 100%. For example, you'll show up at a location at a time of day that you feel is likely to yield good light, at a location that is photogenic, and then you don't really know what you're going to do there. You don't have a specific image in mind, but you reunite those ingredients together, and that they'll possibly lead to something that is compelling. At the other end of the spectrum, you have photographers who work perhaps who pre-visualize a little bit more, who plan out the shots a little bit more. And I bounce from one end of the spectrum to the other. I love to go out. Part of my approach is going out having no clue what I'm going to do and just following my nose and exploring, like you said, and trying to get in touch with my curious inner child, I guess. But sometimes I like to plan out, and I hate to use the term stage because it's got a negative spin to it, but sometimes I like to stage shots. It's something will pop up in your mind's eye that seems, almost impossible at first. But then when you come up with, okay, here's the list of things that needs to happen for this image to come to exist. I might be out there thinking, it'd be cool to have the Milky Way in this spot at that specific ice cave with a climber or something. Not something that you'll just encounter spontaneously if you go out there. It requires careful planning, but I find that approach to photography just as engaging and exhilarating. So I love that about photography as well. So I like to bounce from one to the other. So my approach is kind of all over the place, and I move left and right on that spectrum, and I have done so over the course of my career.
Yeah, that's incredible. I think being able to not only go out there and have that spontaneous approach to photography is important. I know. I think the word that you're looking for is craft a photograph. That's what I like, and I know there are a lot of conditions that you've captured. And one of the one that we use for the poster of this event, right, is an ice climber with the Milky Way, and or the other one with the aurora. And a lot of that is impossible to kind of, I mean, it's not impossible, but how many times do you have to go out there if you just want to do it spontaneously? So, I love how the thought process, and you take that creativity from the exploration to create and craft some of this really just one of a kind images. So that's just so inspiring. So
Thank you.
before we get into your photos and some of the things that you've done, I know you've been working on a project as well, to kind of tell a story about how our environment are affected and how our ice are slowly disappearing. Do you want to talk a little bit about that and share us what motivate you to start that project?
For sure, Stanley. It's a project called cryophilia, which means an affinity for the cold, an affinity for cold places. And I've always been drawn to cold places and to the high latitudes and to ice and snow ever since I was little. But the project that I started recently, cryophilia, is more of a deliberate, focused effort that started about a year ago. I intend to keep going in that direction over the next couple years, and the goal is to really document ice in its many forms here locally as well as around the globe. I find that, especially on a local scale, I'm fortunate to live very close to where those very rapid changes are happening, and I live very close to a lot of fairly easily accessible glaciers that are changing just drastically on a yearly basis, even on a seasonal basis. And so I feel like it's important to document those places, not just the changes, but also the aesthetics, right? There's a lot of talk about the changes in the local glaciers around the world, but also want to go out there and try to showcase that world that is foreign to a lot of people. I'd like to bring it to the people who can't physically get there, perhaps, and see if it stirs up emotion in them. I'm not a scientist, so I'm not going to pretend that I can, join the chorus of voices speaking for climate change and the changes in glaciation. But where I can contribute, I think, perhaps more with a quieter voice, I guess, in a way, is maybe showcase the aesthetics and how magical those places are and how unique those environments are through photography. So that's really the goal of this latest project. And I've visited several local glaciers um, for that purpose just over the last 5-6 months, some of them repeatedly. And it's absolutely incredible the variety of ice formations that you can find there with every new visit. It's like I said before, it's a whole new canvas to work with. It's very, very exciting. It's a little bit alarming at the same time, but I feel like being based out of Banff, I'm in a perfect position to bring that story to the world. So that's what cryophilia is about in a nutshell.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. And I think it's really important to, bring that story out there, and to spread the word. Now, when it comes to ice and how the global warming affected the ice, and being living in a place that is surrounded by glaciers, snow, how much of an effect have you feel, and impacted the area where predominantly you get a lot of a really really long winter and really really cold days as well, like you say at the moment, it's hitting I think -30 and whatnot. But how much of an impact have you seen over the years, and why is it important to voice our concern out there?
Oh, we've seen a tremendous impact. That's the thing. Those are phenomena that are happening truly on a human time scale and beyond. I mean, we have some glaciers locally that have lost hundreds of meters horizontally in one single summer. And so if you were to visit any of the local glaciers on a yearly basis, they feel like completely different places. You feel like you've never, as a photographer, there's hardly anything you recognize when you go from one year to the other. So the impact is very, very obvious here. I started at photography at Bow Lake quite a few years ago, and if I look back at the first photographs of Bow Glacier, Crowfoot Glacier that I took there at Bow Lake, I mean, just the difference over the last 15 years is just mind-boggling. Why is it important? Well, I think for one, it's the loss of an incredible experience. Those places, like I said, are incredibly unique, bring joy to so many people. People just turn into 4 5, they turn into 5-year-old kids when they're in presence of you watch people at the Athabasca Glacier and how they respond to that. It's magical. It's incredible to see the transformation in people. The glaciers give the lakes those incredible hues of blue and green that are world famous, that eventually that'll go away as well. Of course, now there's the whole the fact that the glaciers, the ice fields, are an important source of water here in Western Canada. There's so many ramifications to the loss of our glaciers. So there's and the fact that those glaciers are disappearing, pretty much within the next lifetime, it's it's hard to fathom that, for sure.
Yeah, I think that was a really wake up call when I heard that, how quickly a glacier recedes in 1 year. I remember when you told me that, and it really like shocked me. I was like, wow, that quickly, I would never imagine that those massive ice. And when you get there, they're not tiny, right? On a photo, you might see a glacier and they look at, oh yeah, it's beautiful, but when you're there, it's a whole mountain of them, and some of them you could look up and it's as if it was 3 5 story building, right? But to hear your story on how it receded that quickly, that's really concerning.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I want to bring him back to your photography, right? You and it's still kind of connected to what you're doing here on your project, but you're really good at creating at doing a storytelling through a photo, through your photography, and being able to let your photo speak for itself, right? Creating the emotion, the mood, as well as the awe when people are looking to your photo. Now, just take us through what are some of your thought process as well as your approach when it comes to storytelling, and what do you think the audience can do in order to create a more compelling, a more powerful story through their photography?
Well, I think it's pretty simple, really. You have to shoot what gets you fired up and what you're passionate about, and what compels you to say, holy smokes, I'm going to put down the camera bag and the tripod here and pull out all my gear. This is incredible. Whether or not the audience responds to it, I mean, that I see that as it's a bit of a bonus. I think if people respond strongly to your images, then that's great. And it's a nice byproduct, I guess. But I find that we don't go out there taking photos specific, first and foremost for an audience. I don't think that's a sustainable way to do photography. I think every photographer out there will do his or her best storytelling when they shoot stories that they're truly in love with and truly passionate about. And so for me right now, it's the story of those local glaciers, and I don't know what it'll be in a couple years from now. And there's other things I like to shoot as well that draw me to pick up the camera. But I think what I would say to perhaps, I don't know, people who are just starting in photography is it's really easy to start shooting for people other than ourselves, right? Because especially in this age of social media, it's easy to get really quick feedback in terms of the numbers, the stats on any image that you post. And then it's easy to start just creating the same thing over and over again because obviously people love it, but that doesn't do much for you as a photographer. So what I usually encourage people to do, and I've been guilty of that as well, I don't get it right every time, but it's worth fighting that battle for sure, and trying to just first and foremost create what gets you fired up and as an artist, and what keeps you moving forward, and what gets you really, really excited, what turns you into that little kid again.
Yeah, no, I think that's something that I really learned a lot from you is finding that spark and the passion and the things that turn you into a little kid. And I think I could not stress how important is that. If you don't enjoy it, then you're not gonna come up with something that's extraordinary, right? So yeah, I really enjoy that. And all right. Well, Paul, thanks a lot for sharing your story, your
Yeah.
project, as well as your approach. And there's a lot to be said about your photography, your creativity, as well as how you craft some of this photograph. And we know, looking at your photo, you've created not only one or two or a handful, but almost throughout your portfolio, you create things or a photo, a moment that is truly unique. And that has, when you just say that, what sparks you, what makes you like an inner kid, I think a lot of that comes back to that. And I can really see your passion behind it. All right,
Thanks so
so
much for the kind words, Stanley. I really appreciate it. And, of course, like everyone, the images that people see are only the ones that worked out. There's so many more that never worked out. But I found the trend that I see is the ones when it works out is usually because I allow myself to be curious. I shoot what I'm really, really excited about. And that gets me really engaged with those environments.
yeah, no, 100%. So we'll go through some of your photograph, and right, and we'll get you to share what how well, I guess we just get you to talk through some of this photograph, and these are a really good testament about your work, your art, right? So feel free to kind of start this photo here. I see that as a methane bubbles, and going back to what we talked about earlier, it's about crafting an image that not only land in beautiful in a landscape sort of photography, right? The the classic landscape photography, but you like to add a little bit of spark in there. You connect it with your passion for wild eyes. So tell us a little bit about this image, Paul. How did you come about? What are some of the gear that you use, and perhaps what were your thinking process to create this photograph right here?
You bet, Stanley. So all of the images are very recent because they're all taken with the latest filters. They all feature the filters being used. This is perhaps one of my favorite times of year here in the Rockies. Tends to be the month of November, and because it's wild ice, tends to be wild ice season in the Rockies. That's when most of the lakes first freeze, and if you get the right set of conditions, well, you get to experience something like what you see here, and the lakes turn into giant mirrors where you get double the scenery because you got the reflection all around you, and you can see the lake bottom, and you can see the fish under your skates at times, and you can explore some fascinating features that form differently every year. You can see methane bubbles in the foreground there that sort of have a sort of a 3D feel to them because you can clearly see the lake bottom. So this is all beautiful, crystal clear ice. One of my passions that I've developed recently too has been really working with the figure skating community here in Canada. And I've been able to work. I was out all day today actually working with a bunch of figure skaters on Lake Louise. But this is my friend Bryce. I went out to Spray Lakes with him, and we didn't really know. Again, it's one of those things where we went to a lake that we figured would have good eyes, good possibilities, but we didn't really know what shots we would create. Plus, I'd never worked with Bryce before on that, from as a photographer. And so we went out there, and then we had beautiful sunbeams, sort of those God beams in the background. And Bryce was skating around, and we're sort of marveling at what's under her feet. And then I spotted those methane bubbles, which were really cool. You had the big circular bubble, and then a stack of sort of pancake bubbles, sort of shooting up in the middle of it. And what happens is, as the lake freezes thicker and thicker, the methane that's created by the organic material at the bottom of the lake can freeze at several different levels in the ice. So you get this cool 3D effect. So I absolutely loved this foreground. And so I asked Bryce to be the human element in the background that would hopefully compete for attention with that pretty prominent foreground that we'd come across. And Bryce ran through a whole bunch of, I said, I don't know what you can do as a figure skater. Give me a bit of everything. And then when I see something that works out well for the photo, I'll let you know. And he did a bunch of jumps. And when he exited that one jump, he had that sort of Messiah shape to him. And he seemed to, with the God beams in the background, he seemed to sort of rise up into the sky a little bit, and it kind of mimicked the bubbles rising up as well. And so there was, we started sort of playing around with that theme, and then it was just a matter of asking him to do it like 12 times in a row until the timing was perfect. And I'm fortunate I get to work with people who really believe in they believe that it takes work to get a solid image and something memorable, and they don't mind putting in the work, and they believe in the process. So they don't mind putting themselves through a lot for an image to happen. And the trickiest thing about this image was to elevate him above the tree line in the background. So shooting super low, and I had to separate him from the tree line in the background, of course, centering him properly as well. So it took a few tries, but eventually it worked out. And I used, in terms of the gear, shot vertical with the wide lens and polarizer in order to really bring out the lake bottom. There was a lot more reflection than what you see here. And I felt like without the contrast, you lost that sort of trippy 3D effect in the foreground. And whereas as soon as I threw the filter on and I maximized the polarization, it seemed like the bubble was popping out of the photo quite a bit more. And so we ended up with a lot of shots that we liked, but this was the one that we liked best, taken at Spray Lakes not too long ago, actually.
Yeah, wow, what a stunning shot. And looking at this photo, it's just composed perfectly. And hearing your story about the pose and trying to find the right pose for the right theme and giving that right storytelling, it's just incredible.
Thank you.
It's really easy to kind of look at a photo like this and see, it's okay, well, I can just go out there to a frozen lake, try to create something like this. But that polarizer really did a good job bringing out a lot of the details of the rocks on the background. I'm very surprised, especially during the day like this where there's a lot of reflection. Yeah, it turns out really well. Beautiful shot, Paul.
Thanks so
All
much. I
right.
appreciate it.
Yeah, let's go to the next one. So here we are. We have again a really nice still waters. That's just incredible. That how still that water is. Beautiful leading line, creating this, taking your eye basically from the side of the image into that beautiful peak in the middle there, as well as you're able to create that foreground that attract the audience right away. So what I really love about this photo is having that foreground, the rocks with the foreground, but then you also have the reflection, just a little bit further up where it matters, right? Because right where the rocks are, it'll probably just the sky. So tell us a little bit about this image and how you created something like this.
For sure, Stanley. So this was taken in at Skokie Lakes in Banff National Park, not too far from where I live. It's in the back country, perhaps half a day's walk from the road, and it's a place that turns absolutely. It's always beautiful, but it turns absolutely magical in the fall when all the large trees turn gold. You can see the trees in the background there, and I love that when the trees turn. I find that gold and blue combination is one of the finest in nature, and it's so exciting to capture as a photographer. And when you go out there on a beautiful sunny day and the lakes are calm, and the lakes in the Rockies of course are famous for their blue turquoise color, so you can really build images all around that sort of contrast between the gold and the blue. And I went to Skokie that day specifically to create images of this type, not knowing exactly what I would shoot, but I went out there with the whole arsenal, planning on just visiting some locations, several locations I'd visited before, but trying to come up with something that I never really tried. And I love coming across that water that when you polarize it, you can almost not tell where the air stops and the water begins, right? I love that look. And, of course, all the rocks here are underwater, but the water is of such clarity. And in the fall in the Rockies, in the summer, you have a lot more silt that's suspended, and the clarity is not nearly the same. And typically, when you go there, in the fall, a lot of the silt has settled at the bottom of the lake, and the clarity is absolutely incredible, such as what you see here. And so, yeah, pretty simple shot, pretty simple composition. I was trying to add a lot of depth and trying to, yeah, a little bit mesmerize the viewer, I guess, a little bit by having them wonder, is this above, below water, and really trying to celebrate the clarity of the lake, of the lakes that we have in the fall. So that was sort of the thought process, and shot this super wide vertical so that I would have as much depth as possible, and went full symmetry with this.
Yeah, no, it's incredible. I mean, for people who's seen this and not aware about the polarizer filter, it almost feel like the rock is out of the water and blend through into the water, so to speak, like you say. But yeah, that's just such a stunning image.
Thank
All
you.
right, let's go to the next one. So here we have a photo of a stream of water coming down, and you have beautiful mountain. And I'm not sure how big of a screen you guys are looking through, for the audience out there, but you gotta look closely. There is a surprise there, just on the back, right? And I know you do a lot of this in your photography, and just let us know why. why you put a figure in a place like that, and how does that impact your photography and your creative approach to a landscape?
For sure. This was taken actually fairly recently on a day exploring the local glaciers, actually, the Athabasca and the Dome glaciers in Jasper National Park. And I was out there with my friend Trixie, and we were done exploring the glaciers and we're on our way back home. And we're following this river, sort of, we're going downstream to get back to the road and eventually the vehicle. And the light was just had a really cool quality to it with that sort of veil effect in the background. That's because the forest fire is happening next door in British Columbia. And typically it's not an effect that, it's an effect that perhaps, you know, a phenomenon that can get in the way in the field. But on that particular day, that veil was really cool and the contrast was quite interesting. So we decided to make one more stop. And as I followed the creek down, I was trying to find a tumble that was photogenic enough to compete with the sort of sawtooth skyline in the background. And I found this tumble, which it's not usually visible, but it was there because it was a really, really warm day for that time of year, an oddly warm day, and there was a lot more water than usual. And so the water was quite plentiful and quite turbulent, and so I figured it would work really well as a vertical composition. I shot this on tripod with the 3-stop ND filter. I had the other filters with me as well. I did try the 10-stop, but I felt like I was losing too much detail in all those little tumbles, and so I also shot it fast, so with a fast shutter speed, but I felt like the tumble was just, I experimented with different shutter speeds, and I felt like this was just right with the 3-stop filter. And I took 15, 20 variations, of course, because the water just will flow differently in every single shot. This was the one that I liked the best. And while I was doing all that, I sent out Trixie, my friend Trixie, into the background. Now, I often shoot scenes like this without the human element as well. And then it's just part of my workflow in the field. Before I pull the plug on an idea, I make a point of asking myself, hang on, I do a lot of self-portraits. Can I go in this scene, or can I send someone in this scene? Not necessarily to get a stronger image, but at least something different. You know, if you have the composition set up, the settings, the filters, everything's figured out, it doesn't take much effort to get an image that has a very different feel by adding a human element. So I usually make a point of doing that in the field. I like it in situations like this for that sort of hook element, you know, to just add a bit of interest to the scene. I like it a lot in the Rockies, of course, for the sense of scale, something we always struggle with as a photographer, how to make the mountains look very ominous and prominent. And I felt like the scene was perhaps a bit more relatable. It had a bit more of an adventure feel to it with the person in the background. And so, I decided I didn't want the person to be overly prominent. Most of the shots where I include a human element, the person only takes up a few pixels in the shot. So it's not really a shot about the person. The landscape is still the queen of the shot, I suppose, and the key concept here. But just adding a bit of a human twist to it sometimes I feel is warranted. So that's what we did there. And we both really liked the result.
Yeah, no, it's incredible, and I think I love how you pick this particular image instead of the 10 stop, because I really enjoy seeing the way the water kind of flow into the rocks and into the stream. You know how it hits the different rocks and how it bounce back, and that makes it really interesting. Whereas having a 10 stop might sort of just wash all that, become really smooth. I mean it's all in its own merits, but I really enjoy seeing textures in this photo. Now, one thing that I noticed is that for most photographers out there, a lot of us don't even want to go out there during the day, right, and take photo. And yet here we have seen quite a few of a daylight shot where people are saying, it's a flat light, right? But you created something extraordinary even during the day, where most people say don't ever go out during that time of the day. So just take us a little bit through, what's your thought process there, and why you go out anyway, and how you can transform what most people consider as not so good time to shoot into something that you've captured here that's really inspiring.
Well, I think that's a trajectory that a trend that most seasoned photographers see in their work, is that, you know, when you start off in photography, you only go shoot when the light's good, and you only shoot you go on location, and if you get a fiery red pink sunrise, you'll shoot it, otherwise you pack it in and go home, right? And I used to be like that as well. And I think the more that we shoot, the more we become adaptable as photographers, and we're able to, and the less we rely on Mother Nature doing the work for us, and the more we can make some of the magic happen ourselves through all the micro decisions we make in the field, through our just through our own vision, and the way that we interact and engage with the landscape. I think that, yeah, I know a lot of photographers who used to just go after the perfect light and the colorful skies, and they realize eventually the importance of being adaptable as a photographer. And the best photographers I know, I'm not talking about myself, the best photographers that I know and that admire, they can, when they get challenging, like conditions that would be considered by a lot of people as challenging and not favorable to good imagery, they find a way somehow to work it in a way that they go home with an image that they really like, through their compositional skills, through the way that they can really capitalize on perhaps the smaller things instead of the big sweeping scenes. And so and I think the more you shoot, the more you embrace the challenge of Mother Nature dealing you a tough hand. And then the more you embrace that challenge of like, well, I'm not going to bail on this, I'm going to just, even try to prove it yourself, that you can still go home with something that you like if you make the right decisions in the field, and if you're a acute enough observer.
Yeah, no, that's really, thanks for sharing that. I think that's really important, especially for a lot of us who kind of just started and hear that quote, right? I mean, it's true to an extent, but I truly believe what you said. That we need to adapt and being able to make the most out of the condition, to kind of push ourselves forward. So it's just very inspiring. So listeners, for those of you who still tuning in, if you have question, feel free to put in a comment. I don't know, left, right. I'm not quite sure where the comment place is, but feel free to leave a comment, ask any question. Our team with Case Filter will put all of your comments and questions together, and we will answer them after the photo review. So we will definitely answer through all of your questions. Well, hopefully all of your questions. We'll see what time we have. All right, Paul. So perhaps we go to one more photo of yours, and then we move on to the review. I'm very excited about that. There's quite a few people send out their photos, and they're just incredible. So I can't wait to see what's your
Same.
take on that.
Me too.
All right. So this one here, it seems like I think it's from Greenland. Is that right, Paul?
Yeah, it's from not too long ago again, in Greenland, and it was taken on Disco Island, which is on the west side of Greenland, and it's one of my favorite places in the world for photography. It's if there's one place that fires up my imagination and turns me into a little kid instantly, it's Greenland. Absolutely, I feel like it's the ultimate playground, perhaps, for the type of material, for the type of photos that I like to get. I love ice, of course, and there's a lot of ice, and this was a very interesting this was taken during a very interesting weather period. Disco Island had the heaviest rains, their heaviest rains in 40 something years. And we were there during a workshop. Not so long ago. And there was so much material washed out from the land that the ocean turned brown for a couple days. And it was kind of a bit of a weird color combination to see those blue greenish icebergs against a background of brown instead of the of darker blue ocean that we're used to. And but again, I think it's an example of, you can whine about the rain as a photographer, but the only way you're going to move forward is just sort of get out there and see what you can come up with, and look at it as like, well, we still have unique conditions to work with. We're talking about something that might not happen for another 40 years, so let's go out there and capitalize on that. So our entire group went down to the black sand beach, and where you always have a fresh crop of icebergs every day, and we played around with different shutter speeds, different compositions. We had beautiful white giant icebergs stranded in fairly deep water offshore. You can see one in the background, but a few of those icebergs had broken up, and the beach was littered with really colorful ice, the most colorful ice that I've seen in Greenland. Some bluish icebergs, some greenish ones, and the brown water in the background gave the scene quite of a surreal feel. And so we played around with different shutter speeds. Again, in the past, this is something that I would have shot either really fast or at like 5+ seconds to blur it all out, right? And I don't know, I think that's another trend that I know a lot of fellow landscape photographers see in their work, the tendency to go like somewhere in between, sort of in that 20th of a second perhaps to 1 second, and just explore those possibilities, and really just experiment and see what the experiment with different shutter speeds and see what you like the ocean, how you prefer the ocean to look. And I really liked that sort of in between feel that it has there. It's quite dynamic. And so I wanted the ocean to look pretty angry because it was a nasty stretch of weather. And I felt like basically that was the best choice of filter, and the best, again, that was the 3-stop, best choice of filter and the best shutter speed to tell the story that I wanted to tell. And then again, I took probably 30 different shots of this, and I picked the wave combination, the wave sort of arrangement that I liked the best. And and we all went home with, completely drenched and miserable in a way, but at the same time happy that we were able to document something that likely won't happen for a very long time.
It sounded like a great day to me.
Yeah, it was
Just
great.
looking at this, just looking at this, it's incredible. You telling that story about how, and when I saw this, I was a bit kind of wondering, how come the water is very muddy? Because I know, in there it's usually very nice bluish color, and hearing that story that you tell, it's really cool. And if there's anything that I learned from you, is that you always think about the storytelling of the current moment, and what that can potentially how that can be a potential a photograph, right? And like you say, most people, they see it's rain, they won't even go out there outside of their house. And you go out there, you look at this scenery where most people probably again get put off by the color of the ocean, but you make something out of it. And I think that's something that a lot of us can learn from you, is to create something that most people say there is nothing to shoot. So very, very inspiring. Thanks a lot for sharing this, Paul. And I love how you use your tool and create and help, and you use your tool in a way that it help you create your vision come true, like the different filters, your camera, your tripods, like you say, you pick the right shutter speed to get the right feeling, and I think that's just perfect. So thanks a lot for sharing that. um,
Thanks, Stanley.
all right, anyone, well, if you have question, like I say, feel free to put it in the comment. So by the end of this live session, we will pick one winner from the audience. For those of you who have been engaged, ask the really compelling question, um, as well as we will pick two winners from the photo submission. So very excited about this, and we have a lot of other news at the end of it as well. So make sure you stick around. But with that being said, what do you think, Paul? Should we start looking at some of our s- people, some of our community members who have submitted their photo?
Let's do it. I'm fired up to see what people came up with.
All right. Well, me too. I mean, I kind of looked through it, and I had a peek. They look incredible. So I can't wait to hear your thought. All right. So let's go through. Just give me a sec. All right. So here we are. Just perfect. Can you see my screen now?
Yes, perfectly.
All right. So this is a photo by Grant. I believe he's in Australia. So a beautiful photo of the waterfall here. There is, the light looks perfect here. Like it's a condition that I think a lot of us would die to have, to shoot this kind of condition, have that nice shadow, have that beautiful highlights, the use of the ND filter to slow down the water and create that. So what's your thought on this one, Paul? What do you like about this photo, and what do you feel can be improved, as a feedback?
Yeah, I really like the feel of this. I love the I feel like it's very immersive. I feel like I'm uh it's an arresting photo. It draws you right in. I think partly because, well, the array of color is fantastic. I love the color palette in this, and I love the depth. And I think the depth comes from including that beautiful foreground of rock and the ferns on the left, and that framing at the top there. I find that without those elements on the edge of the frame, the image would feel a little bit distant and hard to engage with. So I really like that. A lot of people shoot waterfalls and really just make the shot strictly about the waterfall, and I love that you went out of your way to really include some of those other surrounding elements that just give more of a sense of place, but also a lot more depth and a bit more of a mysterious feel to the place. So really nicely done, Grant. In terms of the shutter speed, I really like this. I think a lot of people default to the silky look for the waterfalls and don't really explore anything else. And but sometimes it's warranted, and I think in this case, I think that's the right decision. I love the silky look that you gave the waterfall, and that you went with a longer exposure for sure. And I love that that probably allowed you to smooth out that water in the bottom right. It's a pretty heavily textured shot, and I feel like if you've got a lot of texture in your water as well, it might become a little bit too much. In terms of what I would do differently, I mean, there's not a whole lot I would change. I would maybe include a little bit more of that foliage at the top because I love it so much. And now, because towards the middle at the top, it feels like a little bit more accidental, the way that it creeps into the composition. Like I feel like if you included a bit more foliage, it would just, your image would show, perhaps breathe a bit more intention. The bright spot over on the right, it's one of those things where it sort of draws you out. It risks drawing the viewer outside the frame, away from the action a little bit. So I mean, that's hard to deal with, perhaps with polarization. With a polarizer, there's a way to minimize it further, or perhaps it's waiting for, seeing if a cloud will show up in the next few minutes or something like that, or maybe recomposing in a way that that bright spot is out of the frame. So that sort of that's the only element that I feel is a little bit of a distraction in this shot. Otherwise, I think it's really nicely executed. and really draws you in. And for me, it's a very compelling image. Beautifully done, Grant.
Yeah, no, it's congratulations for Grant for taking this photo. It's incredible, and perhaps using the graduated and the filter can help minimize that bright spot as well, and get a little bit of detail so that you can darken it. But you're right, there is a little bit distracting on the right hand side there. But what a shot, isn't it? It's beautiful. I know Australia. I'm not sure if this is taken in Australia, but I know Australia have beautiful waterfalls. So thanks for submitting this, Grant. All right, well, thanks a lot for the feedback there, Paul. I
This
think
is fun. I love this.
you put it very well. Like, I love how you say, most people just go for the longest exposure, have that silky look, and Grant here find that balance, just like what you did both in the disco land as well as where that mountain is with the stream. So that was perfect. All right, so the next one by Watch Tech. I hope I pronounced your name right.
Wojtek. I think it's Wojtek.
Okay, Wojtek. Thanks, all you saved me there. What a shot here! What a shot! I mean, geez, take me there. Take me there right now. I'm booking a plane. But what's your thought on this photo, Paul? What? How does this appeal to you? And I know this is more like a mountain shot, so right on your alley where you are. I'm not sure if this is in Canadian Rockies. Actually, maybe it is.
Yeah, this is Flow Lake in Kootenay National Park. So I'm very familiar with that location. It's an incredible place to create images, but it's pretty overwhelming. There's so much to do there, and you don't know where to start as a photographer. And sometimes sometimes that can almost be a problem, because you can come up with you risk getting home with 20 images that lack direction because you tried to accomplish too much instead of focusing on one idea. So I love that you went abstract. Well, for one, I love the light. Looks like it was taken in the first thing in the morning. I love the light in this. Beautiful. I love that you went abstract and you provide a more intimate view of this place. This is a feature known as the rock wall, and a lot of people would shoot this and feel like they have to include the skyline and the sky. And I know, because I have so many shots that have that in them. But I love that you just gave up on the skyline and you gave us like a zoomed in, way more intimate look at the feature. And I love that it's got that sort of ink blot test to it, right? It's got those cool, like, the snow patches in the background can be interpreted different ways by different people. Some people will see different shapes in them. And I love when people create images that leave a little bit of work for the viewer to do, leave a little bit to interpretation. I love the human element as well. I feel like it makes the photo a lot more immersive. I feel like because you kept the person anonymous, it makes it a lot easier for people to picture themselves on that rocky point looking at the morning light. I love that you have, I love that gradient of light from the top to the bottom as well. I think that's really, really nice. In terms of what I would do differently, gosh, there's not a whole lot I would change about this. I find that maybe the big tree over on the right has, I don't know, I'm on the fence about it. I like that you included the treetop, but at the same time, the fact that it's cut off and it carries a lot of visual weight on the right hand side of the frame, I feel like that's maybe a bit of a danger in how people will read the image and travel through the image. Now, I've been there, so I know there's no clean place to cut it off where you cut it off between two trees. But I would maybe just bring it in from the right a little bit. But otherwise, no, I love how you controlled a situation that is, pretty harsh in terms of light. It's a high contrast environment. And, that snow looks to me like it's got detail throughout. And instead, you gave up on detail in the human element, which is not needed, right? The silhouette is all you need in a shot like this. It's not about the color of the jacket or the brand of the jacket or who the person is. It's really more about allowing the audience to place themselves in that scene. I think you've done a marvelous job at that. So really well done, Wojtek. Beautiful shot.
Yeah, no, that's why it's so familiar. I know I've seen a lot of photo of the flow lake, and I kind of, the texture and all this, it seems familiar, but I've never seen it done like this. So I'm inspired by this, just having approach it a different way. I think that is well done. All right. Well, thanks a lot for the feedback there, Paul. I really like the lights and the color coming from here. All right. Well, let's go to the next one. So here we are. We have a photo by Tristan. What a stunning photo from Mount Assiniboine. It's wow. It looks like he got a really nice day there. What's your thought around this shot, Paul, and what do you like about him?
Yeah, well, it certainly brings back a lot of memories. I spent a lot of time at that spot, and I know a lot of fellow photographers can relate to this scene too. It's perhaps one of the most photographed scenes in the backcountry anywhere in the Canadian Rockies, for good reason. It's absolutely stunning place. But again, it's a place where especially when you shoot wide, there is a lot going on. You've got the lakes, you've got the rocks, you've got the trees, the glaciers, the mountains, the sky. You really have to be intentional about how you compose in order to make it work and organize the chaos. It's beautiful chaos, but it's still a little bit chaotic, and it's easy to just, I think, it's one of those places where it's easy to just say, I'm going to shoot wide with the widest lens I got, and surely somewhere in there something cool will happen for all the viewers. Everybody will find something that they like in there, and then it's easy to just cast a big safety net and let people do the work. But I don't think that's what you did there. I think this image shows intention. I love the array of color, of course. I love that you use the ridge in the foreground to just really allow us to travel through the image. And I love that ridge swings right at the very end to lead us between the two lakes and up towards the pyramid of Mount Assiniboine. So, I think as a fellow photographers see intention in other people's shots, right? I love looking at images that other people took and say, oh, I see what you did there. You did that. Everything is done for a reason. That's clever. I love how you place this. You did that. You chose this lens. You chose this filter, these settings, this composition. I love being able to look at images and deconstruct them and just find intention behind all those decisions. So I think you did a really good job there. Good job also navigating the contrast, right? There's a lot of contrast to capture in this. It would have been easy to blow out the sky. I think you did a good job at retaining detail where it was needed. So really, really good job on that. Love the depth. I love how you have many lines that all lead towards the pyramid of Mount Assiniboine, especially in the sky. So it's an image that I feel, despite the fact it's got a lot going on, it flows really well compositionally. I think it's very well constructed that way. In terms of what I would do differently, I mean, I would maybe consider the left-hand side feels a little bit clunky to me, just because you have a little bit of that white, a little bit of snow right on the edge. Then you have the reflection on the lake that's way to the left, that pink reflection. And then you have that scree cone in the bottom left as well. So you've got a few elements there that are maybe, have the potential to make your shot a little bit left heavy and distract the viewer. But I feel like your key elements of your frame, that ridge that leads into Assiniboine, the clouds that lead into Assiniboine, I think are still just prominent enough to really just keep the image flowing nicely. There's really not a whole lot I would do differently. Perhaps, just try a longer exposure so that you can just you can eliminate, because there is a lot of textures going on, so that you can smooth out those lakes as much as you can, and perhaps just smooth out those clouds as much as you can. I like the cotton candy in the clouds there, but there's so many textures with the trees, the foreground rocks, the screen, the bottom left, the lakes, the cliffs, the glaciers, that I feel like if you can eliminate, smooth out one or two of those textures, you might get an image that's a little bit more to the point. But I think, you had a beautiful moment there, and you certainly made the most of it, Tristan. Really, really well done.
Yeah, and I think what I really enjoy is a lot of photographer would try to brighten everything so that everything kind of balanced. But actually, you really like how the lake and the tree line is darkened so that the main focus is on the ridge, and then that takes you right into the mountain. Right? What a shot, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm with you, Stanley. I think that in the photo community in general these days, there's a bit of an obsession with detail, where how am I gonna just shoot this or blend the heck out of this to get detail in every single pixel in the image? And sometimes it's just not needed. It doesn't really add anything to the shot. If anything, sometimes it just creates more distraction. So it's nice to see at times people just allowing the blacks and embracing the blacks a little bit more, and just leaving some detail out of the shot.
Yeah, 100%. And I think a lot of it goes back to what you said earlier as well, to test it out and then try different things. If you already out there, you already set up anyway, why not try different things? So
Mhm.
it's something that I really take away from what you said earlier. Well, there's a couple more photos, but before we got into that, we just want to share with you what we have. Some exciting news that we have coming forward, which is a competition that coming in. And I know, Paul, you are one of the judges here, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm super excited to see what you guys come up with.
Yeah, it's so the registration is so now it's open until the 7th of January. So and it's a free, I believe it's free. You can just send out your photos in there. Um, Now the judging period is going to be from the 8th to the 20th, and we will announce the winner on the 22nd. So what are some of the prizes that you could win?
The prizes
Uh,
are amazing.
all right, let's look at this. So this is the new KW Revolution ND Pro Kit, which is really nice because they're magnetic, very easy to install, like literally just stack. You have one of this, isn't it, Paul?
Voila.
Yeah, it's and
They're amazing.
so they're color coded. It's really easy to spot out which one you need, and really easy to install. I think that's the main thing. When you go out there, you're hectic about light coming in and disappearing. It's really important. So there's going to be two winners that can win this from the competition, which is a value of 511 USD, right? And then from there we have a Wolverine magnetic kit with a value of 340. So there are 5 people that have a chance to win this. And this is a really cool, again, a really cool filter. Of course, no, a different one to a previous one, in a sense that the one before have that color coding, and it's just very easy to identify. And lastly, there is the Wolverine magnetic kit. So it's an ND filter, and this kind of help you to create a photo that Paul have been creating, as well as some of our audience that have been creating, creating smoothing out the water, or creating that texture with the movement. And like Paul says, sometimes you need to smooth out some of those elements on your photography to make sure that it doesn't distract the main subject. And yeah, this is value from $90 to $200 depending on the size of your lens diameter. So great prices here, and I'm really excited for the competition. So for those of you who have photos to be submitted, please do submit them. I will give you the details a little bit later on the submission. Oh, actually, it's here. Sorry. So all you got to do is just email to marketing@kcn.com, and the subject line is Case Photo Contest 2022 plus your name in the photo. Now our case filter team will put this on the comment so that you can type it up or write it down. I don't know if you write still write nowadays, but if you are in this screen right now and you don't want to miss this, the best way is just to screenshot it. Just screenshot this right now. I'll give you 3 seconds. Hopefully, there's enough time for you to screenshot. But yeah, we're excited to have you submit some of your photo into this competition, and we can't wait to see. Just even from this small session, we already see some incredible photography. So definitely can't wait to see what are going to be submitted into this photo. All right, so let's go back to our photo. How you feeling, Paul? How's you still feeling good?
Oh, so far so good. Yeah, I really enjoy looking at the work of others, and yeah, please bury us with submissions, guys, for that photo contest. Super excited to see what you've got for us, and the prizes are phenomenal. So looking forward to reviewing all those images.
Yeah, no, it's a beautiful prizes. I know I have I use a case filter myself, and they're incredible. I love them.
Yep.
All right, let's go to the next one. All right, so we have a submission from Ina. Something different here for you, Paul.
Yep.
Something a little bit out of your comfort zone, and I'm actually really intrigued and interested about what you thought of this. It's looking to be a little bit more of a travel sort of street photography. It's a Chinese letter, so I'm guessing it's in either China or Hong Kong. I'm guessing, or maybe there's a lot of Chinatown in this world, so it could be anywhere. I'll take that back. But what is your thought with this image, Paul?
I love that I get to I love that I get to look at something. We're all over the place tonight. This is brilliant. A little bit of urban now and urban nighttime photography. So what drew me to what I really, really like about this shot is I love the sense of mystery. I love that you're leaving something for interpretation. I love that we feel like we're a fly on the wall witnessing the after hours of this location. I think that's really cool. I love the color palette. I actually love that blown out area. I really like it because that's where a lot of mystery is. Why is it that like everything is subdued in this shot except in that one area, and then everybody can probably just interpret it differently? I actually really like how you've composed this with that door on the left. Really adds a lot to the geometry and really adds a lot of depth to this shot. I love the composition in this. The one thing that I would consider that I'm not 100% sure about is that object in the bottom right. I feel like maybe it takes a little bit away from the rest of the scene, and it's a little bit inconvenient the way that it creeps in there. So I don't know. I'm not sure, spatially what you were able to do or not, but if there was a way that you could shoot it from a little bit closer, a bit more zoomed, it's because I really love the composition, but I find the bottom right is a little bit distracting. It's one of those things where when you see it, you can't unsee it. Of course, depending on your ethics, it's a pretty quick job in post to get rid of. But at the same time, I feel like, it's such a great shot. I love just those numbers lit up, the color palette. There's nothing. It's not the type of stuff that I would think of shooting, and it's always inspiring to see other people's view of the world and what draws other people to pull out the gear and start shooting. And it's something that I would, casually walk past and I would never think of shooting, but I really love it. I think it's a very unique image. Nicely done.
Yeah, I totally agree, and I can see that object on the bottom right there, and perhaps if you kind of just crop it, it got rid of that sign as well, that kind of half shot on the top right. But I totally agree with you with the blown out area, and this is where you come where I would come back to what you said earlier, where most people try to save every pixel, and there is a place for everything. And I love how you said that. Like, in this case, it is blown out, but it does its job. It creates a mystery, a really focal point to that photo. So thanks for that, for the submission, Ina. And I really enjoy hearing Paul's feedback on something that's quite different. So
Yeah.
um,
And similarly, I love that you didn't really like chase a huge amount of detail over on the left side as well. Like I feel like the shot wouldn't be nearly as interesting if you had lifted the shadows and had tons of detail on the left. I think that's a lot of the sense of mystery comes from just embracing those darker areas.
yeah, no, 100%. I'd uh, I'd I can't wait to see some of your shots that similar to this, Paul. Perhaps one day.
I've got a bunch of I don't mind the urban environments for sure. I don't get to play with those types of subjects that often because I live in a small town, but it's not out of a lack of interest. It's just perhaps time more than anything else.
Yeah, no, that's it's beautiful. All right, next one here by Tyler Martin. All right, so this is really cool because we have a wide range of photography here,
Yep.
and this one is a wildlife shot, right? There is an elk there, and what it looks like, it's a beautiful. I love the nice fog behind it. It's just beautiful. What's your thought on this, Paul? What draw you into this image, and what you really enjoy about this image?
I love the tones. I love the muted, earthy tones in this. And it's one of those shots where, yeah, you could bring it out in post and just crank the contrast and throw a vignette on it and add some vibrance and just really try to give it like a huge, wow factor and slap in the face type feel. But I love that you've kept it kind of subdued. Really, really like that. I love it because it's simple, and a lot of the images that I like because they're simple, and you didn't try to overcomplicate things, and it really doesn't need anything else. I think it's a great story. Maybe it's rutting season for the elk. I love that. I find that fog in the background really adds to the sense of mystery. It feels like you're privileged to witness something like this. I like the choice of shutter speed and throwing a little bit of a little bit of blur in the background, so that because you do have some pretty angular subjects there, especially with the antlers, and it's kind of nice that you don't have a huge amount of detail in the leaves. I would get a little bit busy, I think, in the background, and plus the story here is clearly the elk. It's not really nearly as much the forest in the background. I love the layers, and I find that the sort of center heavy composition works really well for this. So beautiful moment. Uh, no need to complicate things. And I love that the two elk are in wildly different positions as well. I think that adds to the interest for me. And yeah, the background is super clean, well balanced from left to right. You don't have that one pesky tree that just screams for attention that often we have in our backgrounds. The foreground super clean as well, and of course the separation between the animals is crucial here. Otherwise, the image would fall apart. But they both have room to breathe, and they're both well away from the edges of the frame, which I think really keeps you engaged with the photograph. So really well done, Tyler. Nice wildlife shot. Love this.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's I I'm not a wildlife photographer, but I love shooting wildlife, and
Hmm.
it's interesting that you say that, right? Because I mean, I was one of those photographer where I just put a bunch of vibrance when I started photography. It's just it has to be the most vibrant thing I've ever saw, and and I kind of
I
learned.
was the same. I was the same. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's the stage, and it's really take a little bit of learning process that sometimes the simplest thing is the best for to tell the story, and I think you put it very well. Having that muted doesn't take away the attention from the elk, so it's beautiful. And oh man, that condition with the fog is just it's just incredible, isn't it?
Hmm. Yeah.
All right, Paul. Well, thanks a lot for for sharing your. Let me just stop sharing this. Okay, thanks a lot for sharing your wisdom, sharing your advice as well as your thought process.
Of
Looks
course.
like there's a few people. So let me see. Is there any question that you have asked? Okay, let me just quickly go through this. And our case filter team is at the moment they are going through the audience and picking the winner, as well as Paul will pick two winners from the five photos that we picked earlier. So just yeah, stay there. Bear in mind. Paul, which photographers do you look to for inspiration? Brett says, which photographers do you look for inspiration?
There are so many. I really um, it's a tough question to answer because inspiration is just a constant bombardment in this day and age with social media and all that, right? Like every day we consume so much photography, and we've never been as connected as we are now, and so inspiration is everywhere. I really admire the people who came before, um, the giants on whose shoulders we're standing on. Like, and I think it's important to remember that photography started before social media. There were people that were doing phenomenal work with clunky gear, with very limited gear, with very heavy gear, especially in the realm of nature and adventure photography. I really admire um, the some of the pioneers here in the Rockies, like Glenn Bowles and Byron Harmon, who just Bruno Engler, that people that nobody knows about, unfortunately, because sometimes it feels like nobody did photography. But anybody who did photography before social media is easily forgotten in a way, and that's kind of unfortunate, right? But there were people who were doing just phenomenal, compelling work 100 years ago here in the Rockies, and Vittorio Sella, look him up, Sella. Did some phenomenal work in the K2 area. I can't even imagine uh, the amount of work that it would have taken to take some of those shots. Frank Hurley down in Antarctica, of course. So those pioneers just boggle my mind, and I find it absolutely incredible that they were able to get images of that caliber given all the adversity that they faced. There's so many photographers, contemporary photographers, who inspire me as well. I mean, the list goes on and on and on. But what they all have in common, I think, is they all they innovate, and they're experimental folks. They don't just they don't sort of keep microwaving the same ideas over and over again, and they find ways to innovate and to keep surprising me. And so that's kind of what I look for, I think, in the photography of others. Is we consume so much photography, and we scroll and we scroll, and I find what I find arresting is something that's not remotely close to what I've seen before, even in genres that I don't shoot myself. Right, we're looking at urban photography before. I like looking at wedding photography. I would never shoot wedding myself, but I love looking at wedding photography, portrait photography. And I just love to see people just take chances. And yeah, especially in this, like I said, in this age of social media, where it's really easy to be encouraged to create the same images, same types of images over and over and over again. I really admire contemporary photographers who just keep shooting, they keep shooting what gets them excited. And they have the confidence to keep shooting. And if people like it, great. And if not, well, too bad. But they exude that confidence as artists, and I really, really admire that. So that's something they all have in common.
Yeah, no, I really enjoy that. You're not only putting out names, but you also put out why they are an inspiration, and I think that's really important to have that context and have that thought process. All right, let's see what other. Um, there's quite a bit of comment here, so I'm just kind of weighing through it. All right, so here we have GM. We have asking, what's your thought between case filters and leaf filters? Have you ever used leaf filter, Paul?
No, I can't speak to the leaf filters. No, I've been
I, s-
using case filters for a while,
I
and
suppose it's what you can answer, maybe perhaps what do you like about case filters that that you are using right now. I think you have a couple of different models with you. So what do you really enjoy about them, and
yeah,
why it is your choice of filters?
yeah, I can speak to that for sure. I mean, one of them, of course, there's the quality of the glass always comes first when it comes to filters. We put ourselves through so much as photographers to get the best images that they can, and we drop so much money on cameras and lenses, and so it only makes sense that you would want the very best glass to be on those lenses. So and I always do extensive testing with filters, and yeah, so getting the best files, the best images that I can is a priority. So the glass is super important. I shoot in, I don't know, I would argue my share of unfriendly weather conditions, inhospitable environments, and cold, windy, wet weather conditions. So efficiency is a big part of the game for me, is an important part of choosing the gear that I'm going to shoot with. Is, can I use it in a way that's going to keep my workflow efficient, in a way that's going to jive with my workflow, as opposed to forcing me to bend it to accommodate those pieces of gear. So with all the gear that I choose, um, always ask myself that question, is that one more step that makes my workflow more clunky, or does it actually integrate with my approach very, very easily? And I can sincerely say those filters just make things so efficient in the field when it's cold, when you have low light, when it's windy, when it's wet, when you press for time, or you're in a place where there's objective hazards and you don't want to linger for too long. That magnetic system, so I use the circular magnetic system, allows you to work really, really quickly. What else? I love the color coding. I think that was Adam Gibbs's idea. I think that's so brilliant, and I was like, how did I never think of that before? And some people were saying, well, it's because of people who have maybe not the vision that they used to have. But frankly, I think it's an amazing thing for everyone to just glance at the pouch of filters and from the side, especially if you're in low light, and right away, without having to rotate anything, without even having to put filters back where they belong in the pouch. I'm so bad at that, right? When you have a busy day in the field, it's not even a busy day. I'm one of those photographers where when I have something exciting out there that I'm shooting, within 10 minutes, my camera bag's just nothing is where it's supposed to be. And if I open that filter pouch and I can see that golden color or blue color and know exactly what they mean, then that makes my process so much more foolproof, so much more efficient. So I love the colored filters, the Revolution colored filters. What else the last thing I can think of is that new sort of inlaid magnetic ring is brilliant. Again, it's one of those things where, yeah, that sort of should have been the way to go all along. So it's just so close to the lens that you don't have to deal with vignetting, which is amazing. So you can still stack filters in front of the lens, but because the magnetic ring is so close to the lens, you don't have the tough choices that you don't have to make the tough choices that you sometimes used to have to make in the past, because you would have to deal with vignetting, and you'd have to just fix that in post, or you'd have to just decide on the polarizer or the 10 stop filter in the field, and now you don't have to run into those issues anymore. So there's so much to like about the new set of filters. And the main thing, like I'm working I've been working in minus 30 temperatures for like a week now, and just being able to snap on that magnetic filter super quick when you're working in cold temperatures or in low light or in the wind, I mean, that's huge compared to just having to screw filters on and off or use holders and all that stuff. So for me, efficiency, I'm very picky about my gear being allowing me to work efficiently, and the filters really allow me to do that.
Yeah, no, I think I totally agree with you. One of the things that drove me into the Case filter to begin with was their magnetic system, and
Yeah.
just how simple it is. Like literally, it just clipped in and out. It's just incredible, and like you say, just having that color code, right? When everything's hectic, you got snow coming through, and gloves in, you want to be able to spot them easily. So,
Yeah.
100%. All right. So, one more question before we go through announce the winners from today. So,
Yeah.
hopefully, you still have that mental picture of all the photos that you look at earlier, Paul, because
Yeah.
you're gonna have to pick two winners from that, and we will pick one winner from the audience who've been very active. So, I'm very excited of that. Next question, and we'll kind of cut this as the last question. We're kind of running over time a little bit here. Where do you see photography heading in the future? What's your thought in that, Paul?
Oh wow, that's such a good question.
I guess with the AI and everything, right? That's another kind of a curveball coming into our photography world. So yeah, I would love to hear your thoughts on that.
Oh gosh, I've sort of, I don't know if I'm the best guy to answer that, because I have made so many wrong predictions or since I started photography. Like, this is the way of the future, and this is where things are gonna go. And I haven't been the only one who's been wrong. Like, it's a very volatile world, and it's anyone's guess the direction that things are going. And but what we know for sure is that it's a sphere that evolves incredibly quickly, and which makes things super exciting, at the same time challenging, especially for people who do photography as a living, because there's always something new that forces you to think about, yeah, how am I going to still be relevant in 2, 5, 10 years from now? So frankly, I don't give much thought though to where the photography is headed into the future. I find that and although it's a good question, the reason I don't give it much thought is that it's just going to take so many wild turns over just the next 2 to 5 years that my time and energy is best spent on just responding to those stimuli as best as I can, and really just focusing on my craft. You can't go wrong by just going out there and just documenting what gets you excited, and just and what makes you become a better photographer, a better storyteller, and the way that photography is shared and the gear that is used to tell those stories, those things will just keep changing the way that they have in the last decades. But I think there's always going to be a need to be a committed artist, to be committed to your vision. And I think that's just all you can do, is just stay the course and stay on the bus, and good things will happen.
Oh man, that's I think a lot of us gonna need them to put a replay on that, and it's spot on, right? At the end of the day, it's really important that we stay true what we're passionate about, and I think especially with the social media nowadays, a lot of us kind of get pulled away from our passion to these numbers, and it's the danger that we are in at the moment, because we're in such a attention grabbing era. So I really love what you share there. I think that's a perfect way to wrap this up, to stay true to what you're really passionate about. I know you always do that. You always sticking true to your own art and not letting other kind of distraction and noise or criticism to change any of that. So that's something that I really admire about you. All
But
right, well,
Stanley, I think there's also like a lot of people are pessimistic about the future of photography. I think I'm so hopeful about the future of photography. I think it's an incredible time to be a photographer, whether or not you're an amateur photographer or you want to do photography for a living. I think it's a super exciting time. There's so many different ways to connect with people, to tell your stories. There's so many ways to generate income. And in terms of the social media aspect, I feel like the pendulum is already swinging the other way. I feel like a lot of people are just done with stats and trying to rack up numbers and please an audience. And they realize it's not sustainable. It's just not a sustainable way to live an artistic life, an art-centric life. And I think I hear more and more people saying, I'm so fatigued with social media. I just want to shoot what I like, and whatever happens, happens. And people, just more and more people staying true to how they see the world. And I think that's really encouraging.
yeah, totally. And I mean, that's how it should be in the first place, right?
Yeah.
And there are a lot of different ways as well to make money without social media. So
Yeah.
I know a lot of professional photographers who made it and do great without being in social media at all. So 100%, I totally agree with you. Well, Paul, thanks a lot for being here. Thanks a lot for sharing your wisdom, sharing your thought process. I think it's something that we all can learn from and take inspiration from. Um, so we go into the exciting part here, announcing the winner. So we need you to pick two winners from, the pressure is on for you to pick two winners from the 5 beautiful photos that have been chosen today and that you've talked to. And yeah, let us know who is your top two from those 5.
Oh gosh, that's such a tough position to be in. But I clearly recall all those images. Honestly, you guys did an amazing job. Very compelling images. They're all so different, right? Like we go from urban to wildlife to wide landscape to tight landscape. It's so hard to pick one over the other. I really liked the depth and um, the color palette in Grant's image, the first image of the waterfall that we saw. So I really liked that. So I'll give an edge to Grant on that one. And I really liked the tight take on the lake there, on the mountain, with the snow patches in the background. I can't recall. I think that was maybe maybe Wojtek, I think.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
honestly, it's so hard to choose one over the other. But I feel like those were, those images showed a lot of intention, I think. And that's one of the things that as a fellow photographer, that's, like I said, that's one of the things that I look for first and foremost in other people's work is, what are the series of decisions that led them to make, to create that image. When I deconstruct it, do I see the intention throughout, and do I see sort of do I see an artist working with direction? And I think they did a really great job, both of them, at telling their story very clearly and using the elements that were in front of them. But everybody did a terrific job, and I'm very good for you guys for submitting images. I mean, it takes courage to submit an image for critique, especially in a public setting like this. So, but it's one of those things that really makes you grow as a photographer, the critique process. And so good for you guys for putting yourselves out there, all of you, and submitting your images.
Yeah, look, thanks for that, Paul. First of all, congratulations to Grant as well as Wojtek, for being picked by Paul Zizka, but as well as congratulations to all the submitters, right? Whether you have your photography shown here in this live event or not, but like Paul said, you take a step further towards where you want to be to get a feedback, to be better, to put yourself out there. And there's a lot to be said, right? So a lot. One thing that I learned is that we need to celebrate even the smallest win to move forward. That can create an avalanche of success going forward. So thanks a lot, everyone, for those of you who have been submitted. And the case team just told me the winner for the people from the community today who've been really engaging is Said Mesutken. So congratulations, Said. I really love your enthusiasm. I know you
Congrats.
have another question there, but unfortunately we kind of run short. We did answer a few there. So congratulations again. Now, if you guys can get in contact with Case Filter team, so that we can find the details for you to be able to send this email, these filters to you, then that would be great. So again, this has been a really good day, Paul. I really enjoy hearing your thought process, seeing your photo, seeing your intention behind the photo, as well as how you look at all this photography, and giving your perspective. And I think it's so important to see a different perspective to help us grow in our creativity.
Well, thanks so much for giving me the platform and the opportunity to do that. It's always a pleasure to engage with fellow photographers. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, and thanks a lot, Case Filters, for providing all of these prizes for everyone to join in, creating, like Paul said, this platform where we can talk about photography. And I think like these are the things that we miss. These are the things that we can use from social media, is to connect with each other, to draw inspiration, not to get fixated on the followers or the likes or the numbers. And I just can't stress that enough. I know a lot of photographers out there who quit photography because of chasing, hitting a burnout because of chasing these numbers. So with that being said, well, thank you very much, everyone. Again, please get in touch with Case Filters team for the winners. So Grant, Wojtek, and Said. If you could let us know your details so that we can send you the filters. Now, for those of you who have submitted or haven't submitted today, whether you're watching live here today or in replay, have a look at the competition, and it's just you have the chance to win one of the best filter out there. It's the filters that Paul are using, I've used myself, as well as other top photographers out there. And we have a really great line of judges as well. I was looking at it the other day. It was an incredible photographer. So yeah, I mean, I just can't wait for that to happen. All right. Well, with that being said, everyone, enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you very much for being here. And again, congratulations for submitting, for those who have submitted. And for those who haven't submitted it yet, then you have a second chance. There is the competitions, and there is a chance for you to win some more Case Filters. All right. I'll see you later, Paul. It's great to see you again. It's great to be in the virtual room again, right? And I'll see everyone, as well as the Case Filter team.
Take care, guys. Thank you.